And what you're getting at is really the absolute necessity in whether it's a one-on-one therapy situation or a group situation, even a teaching situation, but certainly if where there's therapy going on, the absolute necessity of a feeling of safety.
Yes.
For people to want to reveal themselves and explore, you know, core issues. And so I think there's something a little different about whether it's one-to-one or whether it's in a group. But what is the same is if it's one-to-one, for example, you wouldn't have a client come in and sit down and say, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to, you and I are going to work on today.
Oh, that happens, however.
You wouldn't, would you? You listen to the client. And Hakomi, you know, it's great because we don't spend a lot of time listening to the story. We need to have explained to the person that it isn't going to be them talking and us listening for the whole session. It's going to be paying attention to signs of how their experience is being organized by something that they're not conscious of, and bringing that into consciousness. And so I make sure that people realize that at some point early in the first 10 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes, I am going to bring attention to something that might be significant. I don't know if it is or not, but I'm pretty good at guessing that something might be significant, which is what, as you said, we call indicators. And I want the person to become fascinated with how there might be something they're not aware of that's having an effect on their way of reacting to whatever is stressful for them in their life. That it's not just that life is stressful and they are going to come in and tell me about it and I'm going to go,
supportive.
And they'll go away feeling heard. That can be useful, but that's not what Hakomi is. It's
although that's in there.
That's in there. That's in there for sure. There's a certain amount of offering to someone an experience that they're not getting in life somewhere, of just someone attending to them, for example, in a non-judgmental and empathic way. And that's really important. And we're doing a disservice, I think, if they go away with the same beliefs that life is hard, as they had before, with a little bit of relief once a week when they come to see us. If they can discover with our help that there's a habit they have, and I'm personally really fascinated with embodied habits, that's contributing to their stress, that's actually making the situation in life more stressful and causing them more suffering or limiting them in some way, that when it comes to consciousness and they have some choice about it, it changes things. That's really empowering for somebody. And so people, you know, need to know that you're going to interrupt at some point and do a little experiment that might help them discover. So they come in, just back to the whole thing about safety, they come in, and of course the first thing they want to do is tell us about themselves. And there's space for that. And the next thing, even when we do an intervention, it's what happens for you when we do this. I'm not doing the intervention to fix anything. It's all in service to you finding out about yourself. And then my interest in it, without judgment, without trying to, you know, figure out what's good and what's bad or right or wrong or what to get rid of. If there's none of that, if it's just, let's just get curious about this and see if we can bring something unconscious into consciousness, that creates a real feeling of safety. That even if they have a judgment about a particular habit or belief, if I sit there just curious about it and interested in how it serves and how it hurts and what alternatives there are, that creates a real feeling of safety.
Yes, and I think there's something about the transition from the person coming in and telling the story. So 2 points. One is the transition from listening and being present as a therapist and resonating to whatever you're getting that might be the, a little entryway to be curious about. The transition from listening to making that offer is very important.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a skill that, you're wonderful at it, because it's easy for people to feel cut off. So to recognize the risk that they're taking and all of that, and to offer this is that little segue, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And also that to feel supported, which we agree is part of this whole process, that it feels super supported for someone not only to be present and listen, but to identify something that offers an opportunity to know even more than you knew, is what's really supportive, right?
Right, yeah. And I think that the turning points from listening to moving into exploring become something that the client is really looking forward to. If they're useful the first time they come in, they start looking forward to it.
You got it yet?
Yeah, they're looking forward to talking to you and seeing when you're ready to suggest an experiment where they can make a discovery, because it's so freeing and empowering to realize that there's something, and sometimes it's pretty simple. Sometimes it leads to a piece of healing that needs to happen, and certainly for trauma, for example, but or anything unresolved. Unresolved in the sense of if someone had an experience and made a meaning of it that continues to hurt them, like it was my fault, or it's because I'm a bad person, or that happened because I'm not lovable. If they made a meaning of it that's continuing to organize their experience, life is wonderful at giving us opportunities to have the same painful experience over and over until we go, wait a minute, what's my part in this? And that's exciting for someone. And I don't think if somebody's been coming to a therapist and just telling their story and feeling good about being heard and empathized with, and goes away and that's what they're getting, and that's good, that we somehow on the next session 10 minutes into it slip into them an experiment. That doesn't work. I think it needs to be explained first. This is a method, and it's a different method than other therapy approaches. And it's like have a contract with the person that's what we're going to do. And
that's
then
part
they
of the
curious.
empowerment, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to some kind of, as therapists, we get pretty skilled at having a pretty good sense of what's going on with somebody, and even say psychoanalytically interpretations. That can have value, but I wouldn't say it's as empowering necessarily as this is the contract. There's this is what I'm here to help offer, and then with that information, you as the client would take that on, and then to discover for yourself.
The skill you have as an experienced therapist is really helpful in coming up with a really useful
The
experiment.
entrance point.
Yeah. There's an important shift from offering your theory or hypothesis about the person as an analysis to, in Hakomi, to using that guess you have about what's going on for them to create an experiment where they can discover it, where they begin to understand it differently. So if
That's
you're...
a big switch.
It's a big switch.
For people who are psychodynamically trained.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, really important to have a certain humility about no matter how good we are, how much experience we have, how accurate our guesses are, to realize that we can't actually know for sure. We can only guess about another person's experience. We can make some pretty good guesses, and we can get better at guessing based on reading facial expressions and paying attention to, you know, limbic resonance and body nonverbal. But we're still guessing, and to tell somebody about themselves has a really different and less and more limited usefulness than helping them make a discovery about themselves. So it requires a certain humility. You know, I have a really good guess, I think I know, and let's do an experiment and see if I'm right.
And the upside of that is that for the therapist is maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You don't have an investment in it.
Right.
The person doesn't have to, you know, try and please you or not and deal with that whole side issue.
Yes.
Right? That whole transferential issue.
Yes,
And it's faster.
Yes.
Because I must say I value analysis. You know, a lot. And I'm not it's just trying to understand how what the contributions, right? What the connections are and the overlaps are.
Absolutely.
So to make an interpretation, the way that I have been taught is that you see you eventually learn the correctness of that by what happens during the week, as opposed to right here, right now. So there is an efficiency aspect to this.
There is. And you hit on a really important point, I think, which is about the willingness, not just the humility to consider, I have a guess, but let's do an experiment to find out, but the willingness to give it up. And part of it, as I was registering that, I was thinking, that's also part of the fun of it. If I'm attached to being right, I'm going to somehow make it work that way, and then I lead the client and you know, control the session, and that's not the idea at all. I want to be fascinated and open to the possibility that I'll discover something, you know. So it's really good to have more experience. The more you have learned about people and know about psychology and just understand people, it really contributes also to the efficiency of coming up with a really, really right-on experiment, which is still, though, in service to the person realizing something. And the fun is, it's fun to see them making their own discovery, but it's also amazingly fun to discover something happens that you could not have predicted. And it goes somewhere that you've never gone before. And so it's a discovery all around, which is exciting. And I find myself using the word fascinated much more than the word curious, because for me it is that. It's let's get fascinated with something. That feels like it's the window opening to all new territory that's an adventure. So I think I do get like this. trying to control that and go, a little longer, but yeah. And I think that obviously it's visible.
Yeah,
It's tangible. I think that helps to get the client also
yes,
into more curious than
yeah,
staying in this paradigm of there's something really wrong here and
yeah, there's a real difference between that
Yeah.
and a twinkle.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's solve this
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.